Hi everyone, I'm Victor Strasburger, a tutor at the FSW Oral Communication Center, and I've created this tutorial to explain how to integrate oral citations into your speech outlines. So for this class, you're going to need to include research in certain assignments. So for example, if you're using information from a website, you want to properly give credit to that source. So this tutorial is going to explain all the information you need to properly do so. So let's first discuss the basic elements of an oral citation. So when you're including research or support in your outline, you're going to want to include these four elements. You're going to want to put the author, the date, the title, and the type. And you can include these in no particular order. So let's go over each of these in detail and provide a few examples. So let's look at the author as our first example. So when you're citing an author, you have different situations under which you would do so. So for example, if you're citing one author, it's simply citing their first and last name. So for example, according to Ken Burns, if there's 3 or more authors, then you would just cite the first author's name, and then you can simply indicate and his co-authors. So you don't have to cite all the names. If there's 5, 6, 7 authors, you just simply cite the first name, and then you can indicate his or her co-authors. So as this example says, as Michael Shaw and his co-authors state. And lastly, there's a situation where there's no author, and here you want to indicate the origin of the source. So this can be citing the website, the name of the website, or if there's an organization in charge of that website, then you would cite that. So let's look at our next example, which is citing the date, and this one's pretty straightforward. When you're citing a source, you want to indicate its date by the month, the day, and the year. So for example, you can say something like published on June 6, 2019, or posted on September 22nd, 2017. So the next element that you're citing from your source for your citation is the title, and this is another pretty straightforward one. You're simply just citing the title of whatever kind of source you're using. So for example, if you're using a book, you would say in the book, Endangered Minds. If you're using an online article, you would say something like in the online article, Virginia Apgar's Life. Or for example, if you're using a documentary, in the documentary, American Factory, and so on. So whatever title you have for whatever source, just indicate its name. So the last element that we'll be looking at when citing a source is the type of source. And a lot of students get confused about what this means exactly, but hopefully we can clarify through a few examples. So the type of source is really just the kind of source that you're using. So it could indicate a website article, a book, a video, a journal article, an encyclopedia. Whatever kind of source you're using, you just want to be sure to indicate it as you give your oral citation. So for example, you can say in the website article or in the book, etc., etc. So now that we know the 4 elements of an oral citation, we can see what it looks like within the context of an outline. So what the writer has chosen to do here is include an oral citation in subpoint 1. So first he or she starts with the main idea A, and it reads, Virginia Apgar's years in college were especially active. So now the writer has chosen to put some research to support that main point. So he or she writes, according to an online article entitled Virginia Apgar's Life, published on September 3rd, 2010, Sam Walsh writes that, and the writer put a quote here, during her undergraduate days, Virginia Apgar played in the college orchestra and reported for the college newspaper. So we can see the 4 elements of the oral citation within this subpoint 1. Online article names the type of source. Virginia Apgar's Life names the title. September 3rd, 2010 is the date. And Sam Walsh is the author of the source. So we can see all these elements working together within this citation within the context of an outline. So now we're going to take a look at some examples of frequently cited resources that students use, and we're going to be looking for the elements of each citation from these sources themselves. So here we have a website article, and the first thing you're going to need to locate on this page, or one of the first things you'll need to be locating, is the type of source. And since this is from the Atlantic website, this is obviously a website article. So for this portion of the citation, you're going to indicate something like in the website article. Another thing that you'll be needing, for example, is the title, and the title is clearly indicated here at the top where it says How Stress Makes You Sick. Yet another element is the author, and the author can be located here to the left in red, and it is Olga Kazan. And the last element that you'll be needing is the date, and that's indicated to the right of the author's name, and that is October 28, 2015. So these are all the elements taken together, and they can all be found easily on the web page when you're doing your oral citation. And this is how it'll all come together in your actual outline for your oral citation. So you can see all the elements that we indicated in the previous slide are included here. And I've put them in bold, but you would not put them in bold in your actual outline. Another commonly cited source for speech is the journal article. And your professor may ask you to cite a source from a journal article located in the FSW online database. So I just wanted to give you an example of where you find each element for an oral citation. So one of the first things that you'll be needing is to indicate the type of source. So this comes from EBSCOhost online database, so it's a journal article, so you indicate that for your oral citation. Another thing you'll indicate is the title, and the title here is Engaged Listeners, Shared Neural Processing of Powerful Political Speeches. So you'll be including that in your oral citation in quotations. The next element that you'll be needing is the authors. And you'll notice here that there's 4 authors. And remember, we said if there's 3 or more, you don't need to indicate all the authors, just the first author. And then you can say and his or her co-authors. So here, all you really need to know is Schmaltzly for your author, and then you can say and his co-authors. And lastly, you'll be needing the date, and that's indicated below with August 2015. So just include that date in your citation as well. And this is how it'll all come together in your actual outline for your oral citation. So we'll just read along here. It says, according to Schmaltzly and his co-authors in the journal article Engaged Listeners, Shared Neural Processing of Powerful Political Speeches, published in August of 2015. And the author here has chosen to put a quote in, which says, powerful speeches can captivate audiences, whereas weaker speeches fail to engage their listeners. So you can see all the elements that we indicated in the previous slide are included here. And I have put them in bold, but you would not put them in bold in your actual outline. So now I wanted to provide a few general tips about including oral citations within your outline. So the first and probably the most important tip that I can give you is whether you're paraphrasing or you're directly quoting, you want to provide oral citations for both instances. So a lot of students believe that since they took information and put it in their own words, that they don't need to provide an oral citation, but that's not true. If you are taking information from another source, even though you're putting it in your own words, you're still taking from another source. So you need to give the proper credit to that source. So remember, it's not just a direct quote that you need to cite orally. You also need to cite paraphrases or your own words. Another tip that I can give you is that don't worry about parentheses at the end of your oral citation. It suffices to simply include the 4 elements that we talked about in the previous slides and not include a parentheses at the end. You may be used to that when you're doing MLA or APA papers, but that's not necessary for speech outlines. Another tip I can give you is to just vary your wording, so you don't want to keep on saying according to every time you're giving an oral citation. You want to vary your wording by saying something like as reported by, or written by, or stated by. So varying your wording in your signal phrasing before you give that paraphrase or quoting really helps to keep your audience engaged, and it helps you not sound so repetitive. And the last tip I can give you is, if you can, give the credentials to your source. So by credentials we mean, what authority or expertise does your source have? So when you're giving an oral citation, this is a good opportunity to show that your support has a lot of credibility to it. So instead of saying, as Joe Smith writes, you can say something like, as Joe Smith, a researcher at Duke Cancer Institute, writes, and here is your chance to show your audience that your support has a lot of authority and expertise behind it. So in general, those are the 4 tips I can give you to make your oral citation as strong as possible. So lastly, I've included an example of an APA reference page. So after you've included all the oral citations within the body of your outline, you're going to want to create a reference list at the end of your outline in APA style. So we're not going to go too much in depth with all the elements that you need for the reference list, since we're more concerned with oral citations for this presentation, but we can note a few general features about the APA reference list. So for example, at the top of the page, centered, it says references, and underneath we have all your references that you cited within your outline in alphabetical order and in hanging indent style. So if you want to find out more about APA style and exactly what you need if you're citing a book or a journal article or whatever you've cited, you can visit the OWL Purdue website, and that includes detailed information about APA style and what you need to include in this list. So that concludes the tutorial on how to create oral citations for your speech outlines. And before I go, I just wanted to remind you that if you ever need help with your oral citations, you can always visit the Oral Communication Center in Building O, Room 205. And in addition to getting help with your oral citations, you can also get help with brainstorming your ideas and topics for your speech, reviewing outlines, designing slide presentations, and finally getting detailed feedback on your speeches, as well as uploading your assignments to Canvas if you need to do that for an online class. So with that, I hope you have a great semester, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.